Craig Chandler Price, also known as the Warwick Slasher, is a notorious American serial killer, family destroyer, robber, and a one-time stalker who rose to fame in his early to mid-teens. On October 11, 1973, Price was brought into this world. In 1989, he was arrested for the murders of 4 people who had been killed in his neighborhood: a woman, her 2 daughters, and another woman who had been killed 2 years earlier. Price's history of criminal behavior as a juvenile includes offenses such as burglary, robbery, stalking, drug use, and assault. The vast majority of these crimes were committed against members of Price's own family when Price was a child and adolescent. At some point in his life, he became involved in criminal activity by joining a gang comprised of other juvenile offenders and beginning to commit burglaries alongside them. This marked the beginning of his involvement in criminal activity. In spite of the fact that he participated in illegal behavior, Price was known throughout the community as a jovial and outgoing young boy. This was despite the fact that he engaged in criminal activity. Price's victims were all people who lived in the same neighborhood as he did at the time of the crime. He would always break into their homes and kill them with the knives that they kept in their own kitchens. This was his standard method. Price would stab his victims so deeply and violently that the knives would eventually break under the strain of his assaults because they were pushed to their breaking point. After he was finished butchering his victims, the bodies of his victims would be discovered completely dismembered and lying in large pools of blood. He was known for his brutality. Before he murdered her, Rebecca Spencer, who was his first victim, had been the focus of his stalking and harassing behavior in the years leading up to her death. In contrast to the other victims, Melissa Heaton, who was the most recent person to be identified as having fallen victim to him, had her skull crushed. Price committed his first murder on July 27, 1987, when he was only 13 years old. This was his first time killing someone. After breaking into the house of his neighbor Rebecca Spencer, who was 27 years old, in the wee hours of the night, he took a packing knife from her kitchen and then brutally stabbed her 58 times. She died shortly after the attack. The gruesome nature of Rebecca's murder shook the entire neighborhood to its core, but despite everyone's best efforts, the investigation into who was responsible for her death led nowhere. After 2 years, Price once more broke into a house in his neighborhood that belonged to the Heaton family with the specific intention of robbing it while he was under the influence of LSD. This time, he carried it out while under the influence of drugs. When he was investigating the interior of the building, he ran into Joan, the mother, which caused him to become so petrified that he attacked her and tried to strangle her. Both of her young daughters, Jennifer and Melissa, were roused from their sleep by their mother's screams because they were sufficiently loud. He took a knife from the kitchen and stabbed all 3 members of the family, just as he had done the last time. In addition to that, he bit Joan and one of the daughters, and he crushed Melissa's head with a stool while he was in the kitchen. While Price was in the process of killing his family, he severed his hand from his arm. Later on, the FBI was called in to investigate the murders because of the similarities between the murder of Rebecca and the murder of the Heaton family, which linked them to a serial killer. The Heaton family murder and Rebecca's murder were both linked to the same person. Both the murder of Rebecca and the Heaton family are suspected to have been committed by the same person. Due to the close proximity of the 2 crime scenes, the investigators were able to determine that the offender was a local resident of the neighborhood. In addition, the fact that the attacker cut his hand while stabbing the Heatons lends even more credence to the contention that this was the case. 2 police detectives noticed that Price had a cut on his hand while questioning him on September 5, 1989. The questioning was taking place at a police station. Price made an attempt to explain away the wound by claiming that it was an unrelated injury that he sustained while intoxicated. He made this claim in an attempt to explain away the wound. The authorities obtained a search warrant after the suspect failed a lie detector test and then went to his residence, where they discovered bloody knives and clothing. After that, he was questioned about the murders, and he quickly and without remorse confessed to the crimes. He even went so far as to imitate the sounds of the girls he had killed as they were passing away. Ultimately, he was found guilty of the murders. Due to the fact that Price was too young, the laws of Rhode Island stated that he could not be tried in court or given a sentence of imprisonment for his crime. As a direct result of this, he was sentenced to serve his time at the Rhode Island Training School, which is a juvenile correctional facility located in the state of Rhode Island. he was placed in the Youth Correctional Center, which was the most secure part of the institution, and this is where he would remain for the next 5 years, up until the day that he turned 21 years old. The fact that this tragedy took place in Rhode Island infuriated not only the families of the victims but also the residents of the state. Price refused to discuss the murders while he was there, and he also refused treatment, citing the fact that he believed it would result in him being institutionalized for an extended period of time. He put his time to good use while incarcerated by studying for his high school equivalency exam and enrolling in college classes that were held at a college campus that was connected to the correctional facility. He displayed positive characteristics most of the time. According to the reports, Price's positive behavior was recognized by the correctional facility, and as a result, he was given permission to act as a counselor for other inmates and perform a few basic security duties. In addition, he was given the opportunity to participate in some recreational activities. The public's continued outrage over Price's special treatment inside the correctional facility sparked a campaign to prevent his release, which sparked even more public outrage. Joan Heaton's mother and sister, as well as the Assistant Attorney General, the police captain who oversaw the investigation into the Heaton murders, and the police captain who supervised the investigation, spearheaded this campaign. Their efforts eventually resulted in the passage of legislation granting the Attorney General's office the authority to commit a mentally ill person to a mental health facility if that person posed a threat to society. This power was granted on the condition that the mentally ill individual be institutionalized for treatment. Furthermore, President Bill Clinton, who was in office at the time, took notice of what was going on as a result of their efforts. Price was arrested and charged with simple assault and extortion for the incident on October 3, 1994. The incident occurred after Price threatened to kill a correctional facility employee. During the prosecution's cross-examination, he erupted in a rage and claimed that everyone was lying to keep him locked up, bringing the trial to a close. He claimed that everyone was lying in order to keep him imprisoned. The judge who presided over his case eventually sentenced him to 15 years in prison. Craig bit the guard who was attempting to break up a fight with another inmate in February 1996. Price was sentenced to an additional year in prison after the court determined that he was responsible for the assault of another person. Price then assaulted an officer for the second time in October 1998. This incident happened 2 years ago. Price would commit the same crime 3 more times, most recently in July 2009. After previously committing it in February 1999 and October 2001. As a result, his sentence was extended, resulting in him serving several years more in prison than he was originally scheduled to. On April 4, 2017, Price was accused of stabbing fellow inmate Joshua Davis with a homemade knife measuring 5 inches in length at the Sewanee Correctional Institution in Live Oak, Florida. Because of the seriousness of the crime he committed, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison on January 18, 2019. Thanks.